In 1936, the technical department of the Imperial Japanese Army Air Headquarters began work on a new aircraft intended to replace an outdated light biplane bomber produced by Kawasaki. That older aircraft, although it had reasonable flight characteristics, suffered from an extremely unreliable engine. As a result, most of the produced bombers failed far earlier than planned. But the problem was not only the engine. By the second half of the 1930s, global aircraft construction had made a huge leap forward, and the biplane layout for a combat aircraft quickly became obsolete. Therefore, at the beginning of 1936, a set of technical requirements was drawn up for a new single-engine light bomber, a concept that was very popular in those years. The specification requirements were formulated rather generally. The new aircraft had to reach a speed of 250 miles per hour at an altitude of 10,000 feet, climb to that altitude in 8 minutes, carry a bomb load of 660 to 990 pounds at a cruising speed of 186 miles per hour. Defensive armament consisted of a fixed forward 7.7 millimeter machine gun and an identical machine gun on a flexible mount for a gunner. The working service ceiling was set at 6,500 feet and the range up to 466 miles. Army Command specifically emphasized the desire to be able to perform dive bombing. As power plant options, they proposed either an 825 horsepower air-cooled Mitsubishi engine or an 850 horsepower Nakajima engine. Several companies were invited to take part in the competition, but in the end, two companies, Tachikawa and Nakajima, withdrew, and the main struggle unfolded between Mitsubishi and Kawasaki with their designs. Kawasaki, taking as a basis the German developments of Ernst Heinkel, presented an aerodynamically clean monoplane with fixed, non-retractable landing gear, powered by a liquid-cooled engine of its own design. The aircraft had excellent characteristics and allowed dive bombing, but the capricious and complex-to-service engine spoiled the impression of an otherwise good machine. Mitsubishi went a more traditional route. The project was entrusted to young engineers Kawano, Oki, and Mizuno, with Colonel Komamura appointed as the project curator from the Army staff. At first, a retractable landing gear was planned. However, wind tunnel tests showed that the speed gain did not compensate for the increased takeoff weight and the complexity of the retraction system. As a result, the decision was made to keep fixed landing gear, faired over with massive spats. The mid-wing configuration adopted in the design allowed space to be allocated for an enclosed bomb bay. The pilots' and gunners' cockpits were located at the sides of the bomb bay and covered by a common canopy, which earned the nickname greenhouse. The bomb bay allowed various bomb combinations: 20 33-pound bombs, 6 110-pound bombs, 3 220-pound bombs, or 1 550-pound bomb. In addition, 2 220-pound or 4 110-pound bombs could be carried on the underwing hardpoints. The bomb bay doors were hydraulically actuated. A 7.7 millimeter machine gun, a licensed copy of the British Vickers, was located in the left main landing gear leg. In the rear cockpit, a movable machine gun on a pivot mount was installed, also a Vickers copy. On late production aircraft, other models of 7.7mm and 7.92mm machine guns were used as defensive armament, copies of a German machine gun. On production aircraft, the forward machine gun was moved from the landing gear leg to the left wing root. The ammunition load for the forward machine gun was 200 rounds. For the turret machine gun in the rear cockpit, there were 6 96-round drum magazines. The aircraft was fitted with the simplest mechanical sight, a crosshair and a front sight mounted in front of the canopy. The bomber was planned to be fitted with a new 2-row 14-cylinder air-cooled Mitsubishi engine. This motor was a new company development offered both to the Army and to the Navy. The engine, with a displacement of 2.2 liters, produced 950 horsepower at 2,320 RPM in takeoff mode and 800 horsepower at 2,150 RPM at nominal power. The first prototype, equipped with this engine and a 3-blade variable pitch propeller, flew on February 28, 1937 from Kagamigahara Airfield, piloted by test pilot Yamaguchi. However, shortly thereafter, the Army Air Technical Department, in the interests of engine standardization, ordered Mitsubishi engines to be taken out of production and concentration shifted to the Nakajima engine of similar parameters. Fortunately, the airframe design allowed the power plant type to be easily changed, especially since the overall dimensions of the two engines were almost identical. On the second prototype, a Nakajima engine was installed. Likewise, a two-row 14-cylinder air-cooled engine with an output of 850 horsepower. Unlike the previous engine, this motor was equipped with a centrifugal supercharger and practically had no power drop with altitude. At a constant 2,200 RPM, it developed almost identical power both in takeoff and at nominal altitude. Later, on production aircraft, the power of this engine was increased to 950 horsepower. Although the aircraft were completed 2 months behind schedule and turned out to be somewhat overloaded, handling and flight characteristics proved satisfactory. The maximum speed reached 263 miles per hour at 13,000 feet, which justified the Army's most optimistic expectations. The only drawback was that the new aircraft did not possess dive bombing capability. The lack of experience in designing such machines and the tight development schedule prevented engineers from turning the new bomber into a Japanese dive bomber. Therefore, this aircraft was considered an interim model, and the idea of creating a dive bomber was postponed for the next generation of aircraft. By January 1938, 16 aircraft had been produced for military trials. They differed from the first two prototypes in that the machine gun was moved from the landing gear strut to the left wing, and the fairing on the outer side of the wheel was removed. This improved takeoff and landing on unpaved airfields. These modifications were introduced after special tests conducted on one of the early aircraft in October 1937. In May 1939, the aircraft was also tested with a ski landing gear. Mass production of this bomber began under the name Army Type 97 Light Bomber at the Mitsubishi plant in Nagoya in March 1938. By April 1940, the factory had produced 618 aircraft, while another 68 were built by the 1st Army Air Arsenal in Tachikawa. The bomber's combat career began in China in 1938, where it proved to be a very reliable aircraft. The first combat unit to receive the new bomber was the 10th Regiment, stationed in Manchuria. By the end of 1938, crews of the 30th and 31st Army Aviation Regiments operating in northern China had also been retrained on the new aircraft. By early 1941, these bombers, along with their twin-engine counterparts, formed the backbone of the Army's bomber aviation in China, virtually replacing the competing Kawasaki model in frontline units. However, in 1939-1940, many regiments operated mixed fleets, and various bomber models were jointly used in the 6th, 10th, and 35th Regiments. During service, the bombers were used in the following units. 6th Regiment operated in central China and Manchuria as a mixed unit with reconnaissance and assault aircraft. The regiment primarily focused on reconnaissance and support missions. Most of its equipment was transferred to the Manchukuo Air Force at the beginning of 1942. 10th Regiment, based in Manchuria, it saw combat against the USSR at Khalkhin Gol and was transferred to northern China in 1940. Alongside the main model, it also operated other competing bombers. 16th Regiment, also based in Manchuria and actively participated in combat against Soviet forces at Khalkhin Gol in 1939. At the beginning of 1942, it was deployed in the Philippines. 30th Regiment fought in northern China in 1939. 31st Regiment, from November 1938 to late 1940, operated in the Canton area of central China. After Japan entered World War II, it took part in the invasion of Malaya and was later transferred to Thailand, where its aircraft, including 27 bombers, were handed over to the Siamese Air Force, which used them from January 1941 against the French in Indochina. 32nd Regiment, based at Wuhan Airfield, central China, from August 1941, later relocated to Manchuria. 35th Regiment operated bombers jointly with another model in the home islands. 90th Regiment, based in Yanqi, northern China, from mid-1939, relocated to Taiyuan Airfield in 1941. In early 1942, its 3rd Squadron was temporarily transferred to participate in the battles for the Philippines. 82nd Independent Squadron, deployed in southern Guangxi from November 1939 to November 1940 for operations in southern China. 87th Independent Reconnaissance Squadron, based in Canton in November 1941, equipped with a mixed fleet of bombers, reconnaissance aircraft, and ground attack planes of various models. In the summer of 1939, bombers from the 10th and 16th Regiments took an active part in the military conflict with the Soviet Union near the Khalkhin Gol River. June 24, 1939, A reconnaissance aircraft piloted by Lieutenant Colonel Mayoshi from the 10th Regiment carried out reconnaissance over the Tamsagbulag airfield, spotting 135 Soviet aircraft, including 4 heavy bombers. June 27, 1939. In the evening, a bomber formation led by Lieutenant General Giga took off from Halar Airfield. The group included 9 single-engine bombers of the main type from the 10th and 16th Regiments, 9 twin-engine bombers from the 61st Regiment, and 12 Italian bombers from the 2nd Regiment. The escort consisted of 74 fighters from the 24th Regiment. About 50 Soviet fighters of various models rose to intercept them, leading to a massive air battle. The results were modest. The USSR lost only 3 fighters, while the Japanese lost 1 twin-engine bomber, 1 light bomber, and 2 fighters. The Japanese bombers failed to deliver accurate strikes. August 21, 1939. In the morning, 6 bombers from the 10th Regiment, facing no aerial resistance, bombed Soviet bombers parked at Tamsagbulag airfield. 2 bombers were destroyed by fire, and a single reconnaissance aircraft confirmed the results and conducted scouting for the next attack. Later that day, 24 bombers from the 10th Regiment, 12 twin-engine bombers from the 61st Regiment, and 15 assault aircraft from the 15th Regiment, escorted by 88 fighters from the 1st, 11th, and 64th Regiments, approached the northern runway of Tamsag airfield but found no worthwhile targets, and instead attacked a transport column. The assault aircraft of the 15th Regiment attacked the southern runway, and several Soviet bombers parked there. A few Soviet fighters that took off to intercept were immediately engaged by the superior Japanese escort. 3 fighters of one type and 3 of another were shot down without any Japanese losses. Overall, during the battles at Khalkhin Gol, the new bomber proved to be a fairly reliable aircraft. Operating under fighter cover, it rarely had to fend off Soviet fighters, and the losses were relatively small. According to Japanese data, during the fighting in the summer and early autumn of 1939, only 16 bombers of this model were lost. Combat operations in China generally confirmed the effectiveness of the new aircraft. In February 1939, the 90th Aviation Regiment under Colonel Masao Yamazo received its first 18 Ki-30 aircraft. The regiment was based in Yangzhou in northern China, and by early 1941 consisted of 2 squadrons. The first squadron painted the tails of its aircraft red and the second yellow. The 90th Regiment became part of the 1st Aviation Division under Major General Nakazono. The 1st Division also included the 10th and 83rd Independent Squadrons, and a separate liaison detachment flying Ki-15 and Ki-34 aircraft, based at the Yangzhou and Licheng airfields. The 3rd Aviation Division was also formed. It consisted of the 17th Independent Squadron, the 44th Regiment, which had 1 reconnaissance unit with Ki-15 aircraft and 2 assault units with Ki-36 aircraft, as well as the 59th Regiment stationed at the Hankou airfield. In addition, the division included the 11th and 75th Regiments based at Yuchang airfield, both flying Ki-32 aircraft. The division was commanded by Major General Kuwana. Both divisions operated in northern China until early 1940. In June 1940, a large-scale air battle broke out over the city of Chongqing. In individual engagements, several hundred aircraft participated on both sides. On June 10th, 129 Japanese aircraft attacked Chongqing. During the defense of the city, Chinese fighters shot down 5 aircraft, including 2 Ki-30 bombers. At noon on June 12, 1940, 154 Japanese aircraft, including 24 Ki-30 bombers from the 31st Regiment, attacked Chongqing. Chinese I-15Bs fighters from the 21st Fighter Group took off to intercept. 7 Japanese bombers, Ki-21 and Ki-30, were shot down. 1 crashed north of Nanchung, 2 fell directly on residential quarters, 3 crashed and burned near the city of Nantian, and another went down northwest of Pilung. 1 Ki-30 was credited to Captain Liu Qisheng, deputy commander of the 21st Fighter Group. On June 16th, the Japanese repeated their attack on Chongqing with a force of 114 aircraft. Despite Chinese efforts to repel the raid, there were no losses on the Japanese side. The 32nd Aviation Regiment, which at the beginning of 1941 had 32 Ki-30 bombers, was part of the Kwantung Army. But in early April 1941, the regiment was ordered to transfer under the command of the China Expeditionary Army to participate in the battle in southern Shaanxi. This operation, known as Junyuan, lasted from May 7 to June 15, 1941. On April 19, 1941, the regiment arrived at Xingxian Airfield and joined the 3rd Aviation Brigade. On May 9, 1941, the 4th Aviation Brigade, which included the 8th and 14th Regiments, was reassigned to the 3rd Air Army. It was based in Taiyuan and Hankou, and together with the 75th Regiment, which had 21 Ki-32 bombers, carried out coordinated operations in support of the 13th Army. The 31st Regiment, which had 27 Ki-30 aircraft and was part of the 10th Brigade, took part in a major raid on Rangoon on December 25, 1941. Alongside them flew 8 Ki-21 bombers from the 62nd Regiment, escorted by 32 Ki-27 fighters from the 77th Regiment and 4 new Ki-44 fighters from the independent 47th Squadron. The raid was completed without any losses on the Japanese side. At the time of Japan's official entry into World War II, Ki-30 bombers still formed the core of the light bomber regiments of the Army Air Force. Allied intelligence assigned them the traditional code name An. The main front where Ki-30 aircraft operated remained China. However, with the appearance of more modern Western aircraft flown by well-trained British and American pilots, losses of Japanese light bombers began to rise sharply. The obvious shortcomings of this class of aircraft became fully apparent: their low speed, weak armament, and the characteristically poor survivability of Japanese aircraft. Even the Chinese pilots, who had gained considerable experience over the previous 4.5 years of war, were no longer easy prey. As long as the Ki-30s were covered by fighters, they could still achieve some effect. But if enemy pilots managed to break through the fighter screen, air battles involving An formations often turned into outright slaughter. The first Western Allied pilots to encounter Ki-30 bombers were volunteers from Lieutenant Colonel Claire Chennault's Flying Tigers group, flying the latest P-40 fighters that operated in China from early 1941. On December 20, 1941, the 1st and 2nd Squadrons of the Flying Tigers Volunteer Group, flying P-40B and C fighters, intercepted 10 Japanese Kawasaki Ki-48 Lily bombers from the 21st Squadron over southern Yunnan province and shot down 9 of them, losing only 1 aircraft. 3 days later, the 3rd Squadron fought its first battle. The squadron's pilots, together with British pilots flying Buffalo fighters, attacked a formation of 60 Mitsubishi Ki-21 Sally and Ki-30 An bombers from the 31st Regiment, which were heading to bomb Rangoon under escort by Nakajima Ki-27 Nate fighters. In the massive air battle that followed, the Americans claimed 9 Ki-21s, including 2 victories by Charles Older and 1 Ki-30, while losing 4 aircraft and 2 pilots. On January 23rd, the Americans managed to shoot down 7 Ki-27 fighters, 4 of which were credited to Frank Lawler, and 1 each to David Lee Hill, Robert Neal, and William Bartling. Bartling himself was shot down and made a forced landing, destroying his plane. An hour later, 6 Ki-30 bombers were also shot down, but in a clash with escort fighters, Alan Burt Chrisman was killed. Japanese pilots strafed him as he hung from his parachute. In total, the Tigers claimed 11 victories that day, losing 2 aircraft and 1 pilot. During the hostilities in the Philippines, the 16th Sentai, an aviation unit with 27 Ki-30 bombers and experienced crews who had already fought at Khalkhin Gol, was transferred there from northern China. By the end of 1941, Allied aviation on the archipelago was almost completely destroyed, and for some time, Japanese air offensives encountered virtually no serious resistance. This created an illusion of the invincibility of Japanese aviation. On the eve of Christmas, on December 22, 1941, the 16th Sentai carried out a holiday raid on Bataan. 24 An bombers flying without fighter escort suddenly attacked 8 American P-40E fighters and 2 P-36s from the remnants of the U.S. 24th Fighter Group, probably from the 17th Squadron. Losing 2 of their own fighters, the American pilots managed to shoot down 11 Japanese bombers. 2 of the downed Ans were credited to the commander of the 17th Squadron, First Lieutenant Boyd Wagner, nicknamed Buzz. The return fire from gunners damaged his P-40, and fragments from the shattered canopy wounded his face, but he landed safely. The last area of the vast Asia-Pacific front where the light Ki-30 bombers were actively used was Burma. During the offensive in Burma, the Army Air Force was consolidated into the 3rd Air Army, which included the 3rd Aviation Brigade had 24 Ki-43 fighters, 40 light twin-engine Ki-48 bombers, 15 single-engine light Ki-30 bombers, and 23 light Ki-51 assault aircraft. The 7th Aviation Brigade had 35 Ki-43 and 6 Ki-27 fighters, as well as 102 heavy twin-engine Ki-21 bombers. The 10th Aviation Brigade had 27 Ki-27 fighters, 22 twin-engine Ki-21 bombers, 24 light Ki-30 bombers, and 8 Ki-15 reconnaissance aircraft. The 12th Aviation Brigade had 81 Ki-27 fighters. The 15th Independent Squadron had 7 Ki-15 and 4 new Ki-46 reconnaissance aircraft. The 83rd Independent Squadron had 19 light Ki-51 assault aircraft and 12 Ki-36 support planes. The 81st Independent Squadron had 9 Ki-15 and 7 Ki-46 reconnaissance aircraft. Total, 173 fighters, including 59 new Ki-43s, 124 heavy Ki-21 bombers, 40 twin-engine Ki-48 bombers, 39 light Ki-30 bombers, 50 Ki-51 assault aircraft, 12 Ki-36 support planes, and 35 reconnaissance aircraft, including 11 of the Ki-46 type. In addition, the Royal Thai Air Force provided support to Japanese aviation. 27 Ki-27 fighters, 12 twin-engine heavy Ki-21 bombers, 21 light Ki-30 bombers, and 14 light Ki-36 support aircraft. On December 12, 1941, a Chinese P-40 reconnaissance aircraft, escorted by 2 British Hurricanes, photographed the Don Mueang airfield in Bangkok. More than 50 Ki-27 fighters and Ki-30 bombers were discovered. As a result, 2 British Hayford bombers from the Burmese Volunteer Air Force carried out a night raid on Don Mueang, the first combat mission for this old aircraft type in World War II. They located the airfield but missed the target with their bombs. On December 23, 1941, the Japanese carried out a large raid on Rangoon and its airfields. 27 Ki-21 bombers from the 60th Sentai, 18 from the 98th, 15 from the 62nd, and 27 light Ki-30 bombers from the 31st Sentai took part. They were escorted by 30 Ki-27 fighters from the 30th Sentai. The 60th and 98th Sentais attacked the docks, while the others struck the airfields. On January 5, 1942, at dawn, Ki-27 fighters from the 77th Sentai attacked the Mingaladon airfield, escorting 8 Ki-30 light bombers from the 31st Sentai. Meeting no resistance, the Ki-30s calmly bombed the airfield structures. The Ki-27s destroyed 2 DC-2 transport aircraft from the 31st Squadron on the ground. On January 10, 1942, 4 British Hurricanes from the 67th Squadron attacked the Meiktila airfield, destroying 2 Ki-30 bombers of the 31st Sentai. On January 20, 1942, 3 Hurricanes that took off to reconnoiter the Rang airfield were attacked during takeoff by several Ki-27 fighters. All 3 were destroyed. Later that same day, a single light Ki-36 aircraft attempted to reconnoiter the Mulmain area. It was intercepted and shot down by Flight Officer Mohan Singh, marking his 4th victory. Flights on the Ki-36 were usually quite safe, as these aircraft had exceptionally good low-altitude maneuverability and could easily evade Hurricanes and P-40s. However, for Singh's old Fury biplane, it was an easy target. On January 23, 1942, a daytime raid targeted Mingaladon. 24 Ki-27 fighters from the 77th Sentai and 12 Ki-30 bombers from the 31st Sentai participated. The fighters were late to rendezvous with the Ki-30 bombers, who thus flew to the target without escort. They were intercepted by 12 Chinese P-40 fighters from the 9th Regiment of the Chinese Air Force. 1 Ki-30 was shot down, 3 heavily damaged aircraft disappeared on the return flight, and 7 were damaged. Only 2 bombs fell on Mingaladon airfield. The Ki-27 fighters arrived just after the first P-40s had broken up the Ki-30 formation and forced them to retreat. However, the Chinese P-40s, using their speed advantage, disengaged from the fight. On January 24, 1942, 3 Ki-30 bombers of the 31st Sentai and 25 Ki-27 fighters of the 77th once again bombed Mingaladon, destroying 2 British Blenheim bombers. On January 30, 1942, 8 British Blenheim bombers of the 113th Squadron carried out a raid on Mulmain without losses. Japanese aviation was also active. Ki-30 bombers from the 31st Sentai made at least 4 raids on the city, none of which were escorted by fighters. The losses amounted to 2 Ki-30s, both shot down by old British Fury biplanes of the Burmese Air Force. One of them became the fifth victory of Flight Officer Mohan Singh, who became the first ace of the campaign. Due to the Japanese offensive, all aircraft of the Burmese Air Force were evacuated from Moulmein Airfield at the beginning of the day, being forced to burn 2 faulty light bombers ODACs. Aircraft from both sides were highly active over Moulmein throughout the day. During the day, the Royal Air Force lost 2 Hurricanes, the Burmese Air Force lost 1 ODACs, 3 Blenheim Mk-4s and 1 Blenheim Mk-Ashen, while the Japanese lost 2 Ki-27 fighters, 1 Ki-30 bomber, and 1 Ki-48. In the second half of 1942, the AN bombers began to be withdrawn from combat units and transferred to training formations. For some time, they were used in flight schools at Hokota, Mito, Gifu, and Hamamatsu. By the spring of 1945, a few surviving Ki-30s from these schools took part in kamikaze strikes during the Battle of Okinawa. Apart from the Imperial Japanese Army Air Service, Ki-30 bombers were actively operated by the Royal Thai Air Force. At the end of October 1940, a Thai procurement commission was sent to Japan. Among the aircraft they planned to purchase were a Mitsubishi medium bomber and a light bomber also manufactured by Mitsubishi. The commission was particularly impressed by the light bomber. The Thais ordered 9 medium bombers and 24 light ones. Fighters were also ordered, but they were never delivered. The Mitsubishi light bombers replaced old American aircraft in the Thai Air Force. The new Japanese bomber was much easier to fly and maintain than the outdated American Vought Corsair previously in service. The Japanese aircraft was faster, and its bomb load was 4 times greater. In Thai units, these aircraft were nicknamed Nagoya in honor of the Japanese city where they were built. All 24 aircraft arrived in Thailand at the end of November 1940 via Okinawa, Formosa, Canton, Hainan, and Hanoi. Half were piloted by Thai crews, while the other 12 were flown by Japanese pilots. A team of Japanese mechanics also arrived in Siam on a charter flight operated by Dai Nippon Airlines. In the Thai Air Force, the Nagoya received the official designation Attack Aircraft Type 2. The name Type 26 was also sometimes used. 2 new squadrons were formed specifically for these aircraft, Phung Binh Phi Songkram 1 and 2, based in Don Mueang. Thai pilots quickly mastered the new machines. For the first time, 23 Nagoyas went into combat on January 7, 1941, attacking French targets in Cambodia. The next day, 9 aircraft, escorted by 3 American Hawk fighters, attacked an airfield at Siem Reap. On January 10th, the Japanese bomber units suffered their first loss. The aircraft, piloted by Sergeant Bun Yam Bansuksawat, with Sergeant Bun Suksabi as gunner, was shot down by a French fighter piloted by Adjutant Chef Tivolier. The last battle of the Siamese-French conflict took place on January 24th when 9 Japanese bombers and 3 American Martin bombers raided Siem Reap airfield, attempting to destroy the French fighters based there. After the bombers dropped their loads on the French aircraft parking areas, 1 Nagoya, piloted by flight leader Fuen, was attacked by 2 French Moranes. Fuen's task was to photograph the results of the raid. Using all his skill and desperately maneuvering, Fuen managed to fend them off until the French ran out of ammunition. After that, the French pilots flew alongside Fuen's aircraft, waving in farewell. Upon landing in Chantaburi, Fuen was astonished to discover that not a single bullet had struck the Nagoya. On December 2, 1941, the 2 Nagoya squadrons Phung Binh Phi Songkram 1 and 2 were still based in Don Mueang, each with 11 aircraft. In January, the squadrons were relocated to Lampang, becoming part of the Northern Air Wing of the Japanese Army Air Service. Japanese bombers were actively used on the Burmese front, performing reconnaissance and close support bombing missions for the Japanese Army. They avoided encounters with Chinese or British fighters, though anti-aircraft fire, weather, and terrain posed significant dangers. On January 29, 1943, medium and light bombers jointly conducted a raid on the Chinese base at Mong Sat, using incendiary bombs. Several buildings, including a weapons depot, were destroyed and set ablaze. Chinese anti-aircraft guns damaged several Thai bombers, but all aircraft returned to base. This raid was the last in the northern Chinese campaign before the armistice. By Japan's will, Thailand invaded the Shan states, though it was not officially at war with China. In any case, by April 1945, 14 Japanese light bombers were still flying in Thailand, with the last ones being retired in 1950. Thailand made several attempts to purchase more of these aircraft from Japan, but by then the Japanese themselves were short on aviation equipment, and no additional aircraft were delivered to Thailand. Captured aircraft were widely used by the Chinese. At least 3 light bombers in the Air Force of Mao's communists fought against the Kuomintang until the early 1950s. Overall, the Mitsubishi light bomber can be described as a reliable combat aircraft of the late 1930s. Like many of its classmates, the Soviet Su-2, the Polish Karas, or the British Battle, it was actively and successfully used under conditions of air superiority by its own forces, but proved completely helpless when facing an equal opponent.